Right, so I recently realized I've actually never reviewed my 10.5-inch iPad on this channel that I've been using for 5 years, so I thought, hey, why not? Let's review this now in 2023. So the 2017 iPad Pro was pretty underrated in my opinion because a lot of people kind of forgot about the decent upgrades they brought to the iPad range since the following year Apple gave us the 2018 iPad Pros, which is possibly one of the best iPads ever made. However, apart from the lack of a redesign here, the 2017 models still have solid specs for the most part, and it's why even today these iPads are still great and have aged gracefully for the most part. So let's begin with the design, because yes, it does have a four-headed chin and a home button, which does look a little older compared to newer iPads. I will say though that because the base iPad has been using this design for years and only just got rid of it, it does not look that bad, and the side bezels are actually thin on this compared to the M2 iPad Pro, so overall the design definitely isn't too bad. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. Also, it has a pretty thin profile. Again, the 2018 models are thinner, but this is thin enough where it does actually also bend slightly over time. But don't worry, the iPad still works just as fine. And yeah, this is a pretty light and portable iPad. The only things I don't like are the chamfered edges, which scratch pretty easily, and also the camera bump on the back. And let me briefly talk about the home button because I know some might hate this and prefer today's design with the gestures, but I actually prefer double tapping the home button over using gestures any day, and it's much easier for multitasking in my opinion. You also get the added bonus of Touch ID, which is something I do prefer over Face ID because on newer iPad Pros, I do often block the Face ID sensors when holding the iPad. Finally, I do want to mention this was the last iPad Pro to come in colours other than space grey and silver. We got gold and rose gold with this generation of iPad Pros, so please Apple, give us some more funky colour options back for the Pro models, that would be appreciated. Now moving to the display, this is very similar to the 11-inch iPad Pros, apart from it being slightly smaller at 10.5 inches, they're both laminated, both are LCD, both have 120Hz, 600 nits of brightness, P3 support, True Tone, and also the anti-reflective coating. And this by far is the big reason this iPad's still so great today, because most budget used iPads on the market are the base models that are 60Hz, but this basically gives you the pro experience display wise. Also, if you do plan to use an Apple Pencil with this iPad, the 120Hz refresh rate and it being laminated does make a difference. So overall the display is close to perfection if I'm being honest, with only the bezels being an issue, but even then I can look past that. In fact, a part of me kind of misses white bezels on the iPads, which I'm sure is an unpopular opinion. Now for those wondering about the white spot issue which plagues all 10.5-inch iPads, I have thankfully never experienced this, though it's a shame this was an issue in the first place. For those unaware, some iPad Air 3s and 10.5-inch iPad Pros can develop glowing white spots on the display over time, but as far as I know, there was a recall program for this, so for those who are affected, you can get a replacement iPad from Apple. Really, the only issue I had with the display was the glass, and the fact it scratches and scuffs pretty easily, and I sort of regret not getting a screen protector on this iPad, but apart from that, I'm still happy with the display. And along with the fantastic display are quad speakers, which even today sound terrific, and this again is something you rarely find on cheap used iPads, but it does make a huge difference to the content consumption experience on this, especially for movies. Anyways, let's now move on to performance. Inside here is the A10X with 4 gigs of RAM, and that might sound like a really old chip, and well it is, but because it's the X variant, it performs very similarly to the A11 chip. And so for my usage, which is basically watching TV shows and movies on this and browsing the web, it's still completely fine. There are occasional stutters, but nothing major, and on the whole guys, I'm happy with the performance. I will say though, I have picked up on apps not staying in the background as often anymore and often reloads, even though this has 4 gigs of RAM. So maybe that's a limitation the A10X has, but I can live with that to be honest. The fact I can easily split screen on this and also have a small pop-up playing Netflix at the same time with absolutely no issues is impressive alone. For those wondering about gaming performance, I do occasionally play Subway Surf and 8-Ball Pool on this, and again I have no issues. I'm definitely not going to push this by playing games like Genshin Impact, so for my basic needs, this iPad's still solid. What's not so great anymore is the battery life. Now to be fair, for an iPad that I've been using for 5 years straight, I'm definitely not expecting the battery life to be fantastic in 2023, and that's definitely the case with this getting around 5 hours of screen on time on a single charge. Now if you're a light user, that's actually not too bad, and on weekdays when I don't have much free time, this iPad can easily get me through the day, but on weekends, when I'm mostly in bed watching movies, the battery dies real quick. And annoyingly, I can't check battery health natively on the iPad. I have to use Coconut Battery to see those stats, and while I think I remember the health not being too bad, it's bizarre we can't see how bad the battery's degraded in settings like on every other Apple device. Another not so great thing about this iPad are the accessories. So this was the last iPad Pro to support the first gen pencil, and I actually gave mine to my younger brother because I rarely use it nowadays, but for its time it was a pretty good stylus and the actual writing experience was solid. What I hated however was the charging methods, because we now have a strip on the side of the iPads for the second gen pencil, but this of course had to be plugged into the port, which looks pretty stupid. And what's funny is that I never thought it could get worse than this, but then Apple revealed the iPad 10, which of course needs a dongle to charge the first gen pencil, so I guess it could be worse, but either way this charging method is not that great. This does have a smart connector for the smart keyboard Apple sells, but please do not buy this. This is by far one of the worst accessories Apple made with the keys, basically having no travel, and the actual iPad's not even fully protected. So if you really want a keyboard for this, go for a third-party option like the one Logitech sells. Now coming to the cameras, this actually had flagship cameras for its time. On the back is the same main sensor as the iPhone 7, which of course was the newest iPhone model at the time, and so it does not take horrible shots, but honestly I would still only use iPad cameras for scanning documents. Your iPhone's likely going to take way better shots, and also you do get flash here, which is a rarity on iPads. The front-facing camera is 7 megapixels, and it's not too shabby, but as someone who has access to newer iPads, I definitely do miss center stage on this. When I used to do Zoom calls, it was annoying trying to center myself on this iPad and having to prop it up, but that's no longer an issue with the newer iPads. If you also want to record videos on this, it produces acceptable 4K video footage and the mics aren't too bad for calls. And here's a quick video and mic test for you guys on this iPad Pro. Coming back to the negatives, I do want to mention Wi-Fi performance is shockingly bad on this iPad. While it's fine downstairs, when I'm further away from the router, this iPad struggles, and maybe it's because of the lack of simultaneous dual band speeds, or the fact Wi-Fi speeds are capped to 866 megabytes, but I definitely do notice it struggles upstairs in my house. I don't have any issues Bluetooth-wise though with this iPad. Airpods connect reliably with absolutely no issues. And finally, this was the last iPad to feature the Lightning port, and I know that's going to disgust many, but as I've said in previous videos, I'm actually completely fine with the Lightning port, since I'm only using it for charging, and so for that purpose, it's solid. Now for those wondering, would I recommend getting this iPad today? Well, that's a bit of a tough question because this part of the video could either age horribly or be spot on, but there's been some rumors regarding the A10 iPads, including this A10X iPad Pro, not getting iPadOS 17, and so that of course does make it hard to recommend if it does lose support. And even if it does get iPadOS 17, I'm sure that's going to be one of the last updates this iPad gets, and it's surprisingly still around $200 on the used market for the base 64 gig version, and while that kind of cash could get you the iPad 9. Now as I said earlier, whilst the iPad 9 does have a newer chip and also center stage, you do also get worse display on this and worse speakers. So if you really only care about 120Hz and quad speakers, I could see why one buys this even today. And to be fair, if this does not get newer iPadOS versions, apps should still work just fine on it. And so while I can't wholeheartedly recommend this to all of you guys, if you can find a good deal under $200 or pounds, this might be worth getting over a base iPad, purely for the better display and speakers. I certainly can use this iPad with absolutely no issues, and so if you're really not fussed about the lack of updates in the future for this iPad Pro, I'm sure many of you guys would be happy with this 10.5-inch iPad. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.